There was a lot that happened in 2023 in the Western Conference, and with the new year knocking on the door, we will review everything that happened in 2023 from the Western Conference. Here on today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, we are your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into a Western Conference Tuesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, we review the best of 2023 in terms of best team, best player, best goalie, and we'll also talk about some of the top stories of the year that was 2023. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wilds, and one half of the dynamic duo here on your Tuesday edition of Locked On NHL. Co-host is, as always, Nick Morgan of Locked On Predators. And so, Nick, now that Christmas is in the rearview mirror, we turn our sights to the end of 2023. And what a year it was, just right off the bat.
Yeah, what a year it's been in the past couple weeks, huh? A couple of significant moves. You have Connor McDavid going on an absolute heater again. You have a team like Vancouver kind of come up and sort of take the Western Conference by storm this year. So even in this past year, we've had some good storylines in a season that saw a Western Conference team win the Stanley Cup. So yeah, it's been a pretty fruitful year for us out here in the central to Western time zone.
Yeah, it's been just an unbelievable push through the end of last season with some epic games. And leading to the Vegas Golden Knights being able to anoint themselves with the Stanley Cup trophy for the first time. And not only that, but you saw just some incredible player performances as well. And so we're going to go through all of that here in today's episode. But why don't we start? Let's start with handing out the best team. And Nick, I'm going to hit you with some numbers from the last calendar year for some of the best teams in the NHL. And so we'll start with the team that hoisted the Stanley Cup trophy, because obviously if you hoist the trophy, that means that you had yourself a pretty darn good run. The Vegas Golden Knights were actually fourth in the NHL in the last 76 games, totaling this season and last season as well. They were 47, 17, and 12 through the previous 76 games, scoring 3.3 goals per game, allowing just 2.64 goals per game. And you turn that into the postseason, and the Vegas Golden Knights added another 16 wins in 22 games. 16-6, they scored 4 goals per game, gave up just 2.59 goals per game over that stretch. The Colorado Avalanche had the most wins of any Western Conference team in the last calendar year at 51, 22, and 6. But then obviously their postseason was cut short as they were just 3-4, losing in the first round. So Nick, taking that into consideration, is the team of 2023, is it as easy as saying the Vegas Golden Knights, or is there another team, maybe Colorado, who caught your eye for this last calendar year and their achievements?
No, it's the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, here's the thing. The thing about Vegas is that they put together one of the more dominant cup runs that we've seen in quite some time. Absolutely steamrolling, a couple of teams down the stretch. We talked about it. It's impressive considering Colorado did virtually the same thing a year prior. So I feel like you have to take that into consideration. But the other thing is you also look at how they've started this season as well. Currently the best team in the NHL. All those question marks that we had going into the season was about, hey, or was that goaltending situation where their fourth stringer Aiden Hill comes in and goes on a wild run? Is that just a fluke? Some of this cap stuff that's impacting their depth, is that going to be a problem? No. Aiden Hill is still currently maybe the Vezina Trophy favorite for this season. All of those depth players that, a lot of people say, just kind of, good players playing above their average. No, they're out there and they're doing the exact same thing they did in the playoffs last year. This to me is, the most well-constructed team. This is, I think, the best team top to bottom in terms of organizational depth. And yeah, I mean, if you lift the Stanley Cup, I feel like somebody else has to do something absolutely extraordinary to make you not the team of the year. And the way that Vegas has responded this year, they're the team of the year.
Yeah, and you talk about the Vancouver Canucks. I want to give them some love too. They were 11th in the NHL, and again, this is the last calendar year, so it is from January 1st of last season on to December 27th of this season. Vancouver with 44 wins in 79 games, and so they were just about on a similar level with Vegas, just 3 fewer wins. But again, all those postseason wins for the Golden Knights. So you take the 47 wins and then the 16 postseason wins, and all of a sudden it's telling you a pretty impressive story for what Vegas did this year. Now, the other end of the coin, the lowest is the San Jose Sharks. I don't think there was any doubt here, but these numbers, Nick, are just kind of make you sad. 20, 44, and 12 in the last 76 games. That's 52 points. The Boston Bruins had doubled that. Actually, there were 3 teams that doubled that, 4 teams that doubled that. And scoring just 2.45 goals per game, allowing 3.95 goals per game. It has been a rough more than calendar year for the San Jose Sharks, but they definitely dug that bottom in 2023 and really just settled into that spot.
In terms of a team that has probably done its agenda the best, San Jose Sharks probably win that award because, hey, they wanted to tank, they wanted to rebuild, they wanted to kind of hold back and collect some draft picks. Well, they're doing that this year. Of course, maybe you knock them a little bit for that 6-2-2 run at the beginning of December that, temporarily put them second to last in the league. Chicago, I think, actually passed them in terms of futility. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of saw that coming from San Jose this year. Interesting to see maybe what step forward they take. Maybe not the beginning of 2024, but maybe down the line. Like maybe at the beginning of the 24-25 season. Now that you're going to have guys like, Will Smith maybe coming in to the team by then, you got some young players like Eklund maybe ready to take that next step. So it's going to be interesting to see these steps that San Jose takes at the beginning of next year. But they are the Wooden Spoon Award in the West, I guess is what we're calling it, the worst team of the year.
Yeah, they get the award that nobody wants, being the absolute worst. It's the fantasy football the loser trophy that nobody wants, that you end up having to take with you for an entire year to work wherever you're going. You got to carry it around. It's not a great looking trophy. So congratulations to the San Jose Sharks for being bottom of the barrel. Now, absolute dead center of the standings, Winnipeg Jets, who are 16th. They went 41, 29, and 5. And it this is crazy. So the Winnipeg Jets, 41, 29, and 5, 87 points. The New York Islanders have the exact same number of points, but they got there in very different ways. 36, 25, and 15. Get rid of the overtime point system.
Yeah. Or change it. Change it somehow.
Do something.
Yeah,
it's funny how you can have teams that have double-digit overtime losses, and it's like, hey, we're up near the top of the standings. Look at us. But
yeah, the bonus points champions.
Yeah, that's just in a little bit of a look at the standings for the last calendar year. Obviously, the Boston Bruins tops with their 56, 13, and 7 mark over the last 76 games. 119 points, but how did that work out in the in the postseason? Not very well. Now we're going to take and look at the players. We're going to hand out best player and we'll hand out best goalie as we continue our year in review for 2023 on the way here on Locked On NHL. Once again, we are your team every day. Yes.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. It's the holiday season, as Seth mentioned, and a lot of you may be going out of town. You may be going back to your hometown and want to catch your favorite hometown team play, or maybe you just want to give somebody some tickets under their stocking as a great Christmas Day gift. Either way, you're going to want to use Game Time. Game Time is the ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. This is especially good if you're going to a venue you've never really been to before. You can make sure the sight lines are good. You don't get stuck behind a giant pole or beam. And the all-in prices that show up when you check out show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without all those hidden fees that just magically add $100 to your total when you go to pay. And the cool thing about Game Time is they have tickets on sale right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. And they always have exclusive flash deals on deals for stuff like football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and of course, hockey. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back to today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day, and we thank you for joining us here in a week in which a lot of people, I think, are taking some vacation time between Christmas and New Year's. So there's a lot of podcast time to be had here over this week. We thank you for making Locked On NHL a part of your, whether it be travel, sitting at your desk, pretending to be productive at work, whatever it may be. We thank you for making us part of that journey here this week. Seth Toupal and Nick Morgan continuing our 2023 year in review. Let's talk players now, because there's some points to be had in the Western Conference here over the last 365 days. And Nathan MacKinnon topped the list, at least in the regular season, with 125 points, 48 goals, 77 assists in 79 games here in 2023. Just beating out Connor McDavid, who had 122 points in 8 fewer games, 43 goals, 79 assists. Leon Draisaitl also cracked the 100-point club here in 2023, as did Mikko Rantanen, Elias Pettersson, and JT Miller, just missing out at 99 and 97, respectively. So that's the regular season. Nick, but the postseason tells us a different story as well, because Jack Eichel, 26 points in 22 postseason games. Jonathan Marchessault had 13 goals through the postseason. Mark Stone had 11. Rupe Hintz had 10. There were a lot of great performances, but if you had to crown the player of 2023, who would you go with?
It's funny because McDavid went on, an unbelievable season last year, and just absolutely put up video game numbers. I think the most dominant Hart Trophy season we've seen in a while, or at least a Hart Trophy that was never in doubt. But you mentioned the leading scorer. I've got to go Nathan McKinnon on this. And Nathan McKinnon is somebody that I think has upped his game to a new level over the past calendar year. This is a guy that's very much in his prime as of right now, and still has a lot of years left. But it is fun to see how much he's grown from year to year. I can remember not too long ago, we were thinking like, okay, is he just like a 60 to 70 point guy? Like, is that all like the Avalanche really got out of him? And then for the next couple of years, he, hit 80 and 90 points and got to closer to 100. It's like, oh, okay, like this is a fun player. Then came the cup run, and now we're here, and it's like this might be, one of the most dominant all-around players in the entire league. And I think we've been blessed to see Nathan McKinnon grow. Well, blessed unless you're in the Central Division and playing him a bunch a year. But, just the way I think he's putting the Avalanche on his back. And it's important to note that he's doing all of this in Colorado without that 2022 team,
Yeah.
Like Gabriel Landeskog has not played since then. We've had some key injuries to guys, both, Cale Makar has missed some time this year. Val Nichushkin, of course, has missed some significant time over the past year or so. Mikko Rantanen has been a little banged up over the, at certain times. The depth just isn't the same as what it was back then. So the fact that he's doing all this and increasing his scoring, scoring output in a year in which like the help he's had has gone down, I think that tells you everything you need to know about McKinnon as a player.
Did you know how many players there were that scored points in the NHL in 2023? I have the number.
Total? Can I take a guess? Like
you sure guess? Can.
I am going to go around 680.
You're close. There were 871 players that scored points in the NHL this season. The last on the list, courtesy of NHL.com, is Radim Simek, who played 13 games and had an assist.
Yeah.
So 871 players. And yeah, it's just crazy to me to look at the numbers that these guys are putting up. And the fact that the Oilers have two players on this list that cracked 100 points in a calendar year, with Draisaitl at 105 and McDavid at 122, and that they still are looking for that postseason success. The one season in which they were able to get to the Western Conference Final, and Mike Smith turned into a turnstile by allowing goals from center ice. And so that is crazy to me that you can have those two guys who have been as successful as they have, and that we're still trying to find that postseason success for those guys. But again, credit to Vancouver as well, with Pettersson and JT Miller just missing out on the 100 points themselves, and both cracking the top 10. That just speaks to the resurgence that we've seen from Vancouver here since the end of last season into this season. They've been more than a pleasant surprise so far this year.
For sure. Here's a fun trivia question for you. Who played the most NHL games this year?
Oh boy.
Without a point. Not counting goalies. Skaters who played the most games this year without a point.
That is a good one, and I can't even muster a guess.
This player played 25 games Over 253 minutes of ice time.
Wow, so
Without a
not a
point.
small total either.
Yeah.
I'm stumped.
Somebody that Nashville Predators fans like me will know well, Rasmus Asplund.
Oh boy.
Shout out to the Buffalo Sabres as well. The last player trade that David Poile officially made, or the last deadline trade that David Poile officially made. 25 games for Rasmus Asplund, 0 points despite 20 shots on goal. You also had Ryan Shea play 22 games without a point. And you also had William Lockwood, who I've never heard in my life, but apparently played for the Vancouver Canucks over the past year. 0 points in 20 games. So there you go. The Golden Spoon Award of players.
Yeah, congratulations for getting in. Next time you'll get the point. 2024 we'll be talking about these guys leading the NHL in points. So that's just how it works.
Rasmus Asplund will be the MVP of the Western Conference next season. You heard it here first, folks.
He's got some work to do to get up to the top of that leaderboard. Let's talk goalies, because we had some notable goalie performances over the last calendar year, because all three of the guys at the top of the list just workhorses in the Western Conference. You have Alexander Georgiev, who led the NHL in wins over the last 365 days with 40 in 61 starts, 40, 16, and 4. UC Saros had 35 in 61 starts, 35, 24, and 2. And then Connor Hellebuyck, 59 starts. He had 34 wins, 22 losses, and 3 losses in overtime. Goals against average amongst those guys, Hellebuyck had the lead with 2.55. But that continues to be the workhorse trio in the NHL. And I know you've got some guys nipping at their heels too. Jake Ottinger, 31, 13, and 10. Again, all those overtime losses. So if we were to hand out a goalie of 2023, the guy who had all sorts of postseason success, Aiden Hill, he had 29 starts, because people forget Hill took over midway through the season for the Vegas Golden Knights and led them down the stretch. And then in the postseason, he had a sparkling 11-4 record with a 2.17 goals against average, a .932 save percentage, 2 shutouts, and helped the Vegas Golden Knights hoist the cup. So who's the goalie of the year? Is it Hill? Is it Georgiev? Is it Saros? Is it Hellebuyck? Who are you going with?
Also, let's throw in Philip Gustafsson. Maybe not this year, but over the past year, the second best Western Conference goaltender with a minimum of 20 starts. So shout out to your boy over there.
How can I forget my own goalie?
I would assume most of that was last season, not necessarily this season. I'm going to go Aiden Hill on this one. You mentioned a lot of people talked about that playoff run, but I think a lot of people kind of forgot that when Aiden Hill was in the lineup last year for Vegas, he did extremely well. And this was when Laurent Brassard got hurt, at the regular season. A lot of people are like, okay, well, yes, it's Logan Thompson time. Logan Thompson becomes, an all-star, then he gets hurt. Aiden Hill comes in, steadies the ship, puts up some great numbers for Vegas. And then, after last year's magical season, he comes in and he's the Vezina favorite this year. So Aiden Hill, consistent performer in 2023, and the way he's been playing over the last, 20 games or so, I have no reason to believe that he is not going to pick that up in 2024.
Can somebody go rescue Spencer Martin from Columbus, please? I was looking through the bottom end of the stats, and not even a guy in our conference, but in 17 starts in the past calendar year, 2, 16, -1.
Yeah. -20 goals saved above expected for Spencer Martin.
Yikes.
Yeah.
As far as goalies in the Western Conference that are, I mean, that's going to be hard to top. I mean, maybe
Colin Delia is, Vancouver's backup, kind of the only other guy on there. 874 save percentage in
ooh.
2023, -12 goals above expected. Dan Vladar, that's another one high up on the list. 881 save percentage, 319 goals against, -13 goals saved above expected. Yeah, and then a 785 high danger save percentage. So
Boy, oh
yeah,
boy.
maybe not the steady hand in Calgary as a backup there.
No, there are some numbers that are just upsetting. Of course, Capo Kakinen with the Sharks, 11, 21, and 5 with a 376 goals against average and an 893 save percentage. So there's your Western Conference kind of wooden spoon award
Yeah.
for performance, but I'm starting to make myself a little sick, so I'm gonna move on from that, and we'll go to some of the top stories to round things out. What were some of the biggest storylines of 2023 from the Western Conference? We'll talk about all that as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. Nick, if you took the Seattle Seahawks last night to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, boy, did you have a fun time watching them come back and win that game thanks to Drew Lock and the game-winning touchdown pass. So maybe you had the Seahawks. Maybe you also had Jackson Smith and Jigba to catch a touchdown pass. That is one of the prop bets that you could have gone with. And then you double down and you win huge thanks to the Seahawks being able to complete the comeback. Not only that, but you can also pick from a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to kick off the NFL season. Again, FanDuel.com/locked on to get things started with the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Final segment of today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Seth Toupal joined by Nick Morgan. And Nick, lots of storylines from the Western Conference. We had the mega trade of Pierre-Luc Dubois. We had Rick Bowness ripping his star players. You had a bunch of coaches fired. The Vegas Golden Knights hoisting the Stanley Cup trophy. Which storyline was the biggest one for you from this past year?
I mean, personally, I'll also throw in the change in Nashville, which was David Poile, the only GM the Nashville Predators have ever had in their 25 years of existence, steps down. Barry Trotz, the first head coach, steps in. So that was obviously a big one that shook up the Central Division. To me, another good one is the Seattle Kraken and the playoff run that they put together. The biggest one to me is still out in Edmonton, and that was the Edmonton Oilers falling short again in their quest for a Stanley Cup and not looking particularly great in the playoffs in the process either. Absolutely demolished by Vegas. Didn't look that great in the first round either against the LA Kings. And then, of course, you have the Jay Woodcroft change. And that to me is just, it's fascinating because Connor McDavid has been hands down the best player in the NHL. Maybe the best player in the NHL in terms of just all around play, maybe in 30 years since, maybe Lemieux, maybe Jaromir Jagr, it's somewhere in that range. And the fact that they haven't even won a game, not get to the Stanley Cup Finals, but won a game past the second round of the playoffs. Like it is just like the longer we go without Edmonton getting close, like the bigger storyline I think this becomes. And it's wild. Like it's absolutely wild that you have not one, but two of the best players in the NHL over the past 5 years. Like two guys putting up video game numbers consistently every year. And the rest of your team is so bad that you just get embarrassed in the playoffs every single time. And it's funny because it's not even like McDavid and Draisaitl are underperforming in the playoffs. Leon Draisaitl was last year, the second leading goal scorer in the entire playoffs. He had 13, tied with Jonathan Marchessault, and he played 10 fewer games. So it's not like it's just the rest of the team is so bad. And the longer this goes on, it is just going to be one of the biggest things to watch in the NHL.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick for biggest storyline because I think we saw the pressure really start to get to the Oilers, especially early on this season when they got off to such a bad start. They made the change. Now I know they've been better since, but you just see the weight of all those expectations that they haven't been able to live up to start to really kind of eat away at the foundation of what that team has been able to put together. I'm going a different route for mine because this is one that I know the team that he's on is playing well this season, but they just don't seem to have that same dynamic that they have had in previous seasons. I'm going back to the end of last season when it was announced that Gabriel Landeskog was going to miss the entirety of 2023-2024. And like I said, Colorado has played. They have been one of the best teams in the Western Conference so far this season because they still have those top level guys, but they're just not steamrolling people with the same level of authority that they did when they had Landeskog in the lineup. And so you take this team that is a world beater and you take him out of the mix. They're still very, very good, but they just have not been that Avalanche team that we have seen over the last couple of seasons, especially the one that won the cup. So that's mine because that's about the only team. There are a couple of others, but that's the other team I think that had a legitimate chance to take down the Vegas Golden Knights, and they don't have that same gear to be able to do it.
And then we have Devon Toews, stepping up in the post-game press conference and basically saying we have players in this locker room that they're worse than they think they are. Or I can't remember the exact quote, but basically saying it's like, yeah, we got some cocky ass dudes in this locker room right now. And, I think, from that to Mikko Rantanen calling out Lehman's dad, and it's just what is going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's just some dynamic that's off. And I don't know what it is. We need, Chris and Kyle from Locked On Avalanche maybe would be able to provide some more insight on the scene, but it just seems like something's off.
Mm-hmm.
Something's off with the dynamic of the team. And maybe that's just the best word for it right now is off.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. And obviously it's a big loss that you're not going to be able to fill with just like one specific player. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, one of the bigger storylines that we saw this year in the West. But also, let's not forget the in memoriam coaches that were fired within the last calendar year. And there have been several of them already this season. You have Jay Woodcroft, you have Dean Evison, you have Craig Berube. And I think it happened, if I recall correctly, it happened on the 2022 side of last season, but let's not forget Bruce Boudreau either.
Yeah.
In that general mix, and you had a couple of coaches that also just were not brought back at the end of last season to this season. So a ton of coaching changes that always happen year to year. But what a year it was here for the Western Conference. And we're happy that you were with us to break everything all down here on Locked On NHL. But that's going to do it for today's show. Nick, have a great start to 2024. We'll catch you on the flip side, and literally on the flip side when we flip the calendar. Mm-hmm. So yeah, everybody enjoy, and make sure that you subscribe to Locked On NHL so you don't miss out on any new episodes from our wide panel of hosts throughout the week. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.